If it's not a universal principle, it's not a principle, it's just a preference. It's just identity politics. And we've had enough of that. And that's the one thing that will destroy this country, certainly.
You look at this and see a wrecked country. I don't.
Well, I don't see an English country. So we're in the city of London now.
What do you mean there? What do you mean by that?
It's not, well, people whose ancestors built Stonehenge are not here anymore. So the city of London is 36% white, and that's happened in the last, 40 years. Why are you doing this to the Irish? They are the indigenous population of their island. And you're watching them die and replacing them with people from the third world. On what basis are you doing that, George Soros? Actually, what's the real answer?
Because his platform is an expression of something that has kind of taken over all political discourse, which is identity politics, tribalism. And I'm just opposed to that, period, and always will be.
The question is is Ireland Ireland? If it's majority non-Irish? Oh, shut up, they're Irish. No, they're actually not Irish.
And you have a very distinct 1,000-year-old or older culture that's based on Irishness, the indigenous population of the island that we're on right now. And they're being replaced at super high speed.
I think it's reached, or it is quickly reaching a point where democratic reforms are going to be pretty tough because of the demographic change. And that, of course, the point of importing all these people is to overwhelm the people who live there who disapprove of the program. So you don't have to care what they think because you just bring in new people and their will becomes all that matters. And
which is identity politics, tribalism. And I'm just opposed to that, period, and always will be.
The reason I'm telling you all this is because I'm playing both sides so that I always come out on top.
Tucker Carlson, for all the good he's done in the last few years, has been speaking out of both sides of his mouth when it comes to identity, and it's ruining his credibility to speak on the most important issue of our time, immigration and demographic replacement. How can the man who on some days sounds like this...
what percentage of Germany will be German? And the answer in 100 years, and the answer is probably less than half. Is that okay with you? This is the indigenous population of the country. Then the question is we're all Germans. This is crazy.
The next day, talk like this.
Because God created every person as an individual, not as a group. No woman gave birth to a community. We hate that kind of thinking, right? Collectivist thinking like that. That's identity politics.
So Tucker is vociferous and explicit in his lamentations of my home nation of Ireland and other European countries having their people become a minority and their identity erased, but he's totally against all identity politics and says that...
Which is identity politics, tribalism. And I'm just opposed to that, period, and always will be.
Well, of course, this begs the obvious question that if all tribalism and identity politics is immoral and anti-Christian, then why is it a bad thing if, for example, the Irish become a minority? Irish is just an identity group, and caring about their future and wanting to preserve that people as a distinct group is textbook identity politics. You're supposed to be religiously against that. So who's to say that Nigerians, Pakistanis, Indians and Algerians flooding into once homogenous countries in record numbers is a bad thing? That's just identity politics. Once those people get there, surely they're just as Irish or French or German as anyone. Every single one of the millions of third worlders streaming into the West is an individual. And if we were to make any group assumptions about them, their behaviour, their beliefs, their potential, and how they compare to native Europeans and their culture and customs, well, that would be comparing one tribe or one identity against another. And that's just textbook tribalism and identity politics, which Tucker is vehemently against. But remember, he also wants to know...
Is Ireland Ireland? If it's majority non-Irish?
What percentage of Germany will be German?
Also, for a man who hates tribalism and identity politics, he seems to be a lot more pissed off at the Christians being killed in Gaza than the Muslims.
So when they bomb the church, it's because they don't want the church. That land is supposed to be part of the Jewish
You're not
state.
allowed to use my tax dollars to bomb churches.
Well, that's what they're doing.
I'll put up with a lot of stuff, but I think that's... And I've said this 100 times, let me say it again. I don't understand how any Christian leader in the United States can sit by and not say something about that.
The core of it is, why is Israel killing Christians?
Yeah.
Who fund it? Americans fund Israel, fund the IDF. None of this would be possible without the United States and Christians in the United States. So they don't get to kill Christians. They don't get to block access to Christian holy sites. They don't get to allow people to spit on Christian clergy, and they definitely don't get permission from the country that funds them to blow up churches or Christian hospitals.
If all we're supposed to care about is individualism and we hate tribalism, then why is it important that they're killing Christians in Gaza? Tucker doesn't personally know any of these people as individuals, and there are many times more Muslims being killed, but he has been exceptionally disgusted at the killing of Christians, going out of his way to repeatedly bring it up on his show. Could that be because they're part of his tribe, and thus he identifies more with them than the tens of thousands of Muslims being massacred, so it's caused him greater hurt? Nah, that's just silly, because that would be identity politics, and we all know.
Which is identity politics, tribalism. And I'm just opposed to that.
You can clearly see that this position is totally incomprehensible when you think about it for more than 5 seconds. Tucker knows in his bones what an Irishman is. He knows what a Frenchman is, he knows what a German is, he knows what an American is, and he knows that identity matters. He knows that people make culture, and when you replace people, you replace the culture. But he is pretending he doesn't. For years, he has opined about the demographic change in Europe, but in the last few weeks, with the identitarian right rising in America, he has decided to position himself as a bulwark against them. He is blatantly undermining American identity and the new American right wing on the defining issue of the 21st century, the issue that will decide the fate of our nations and our families for generations. And the worst part is, he's getting away with it because there's just people on the right who are worse than him. For example, Vivek Ramaswamy has decided to have his annual Christmas crashout and tell Americans that it doesn't matter if their ancestors fought to create this nation in 1776 and have been there ever since. Some Bangladeshi pushcart driver with a PDF of the Constitution on his stolen phone is just as American as they are.
I think the idea of a heritage American is about as loony as anything the woke left has actually put up. There is no American who is more American than somebody else. The idea that a heritage American is more American than another American is un-American at its core. And I will fight to the very end for that, because that's what it means to be an American. We believe in ideals. That is who we are. And Ronald Reagan understood this. He famously said, you could go to Italy, but you would never be an Italian. You could move to Germany, but you would never be a German. You could pack your bags and live the rest of your life in China or Japan. You would never be Chinese or Japanese.
Which is identity politics, tribalism. And I'm just opposed to that.
But you can come from any one of those countries to the United States of America, and you can still be an American, so long as you pledge allegiance to the ideals in that flag.
Now, I know that clips like this cause a reaction from most American right-wingers far more visceral than anything Tucker has said. But I want you to push that guttural feeling aside and actually answer this. What are the meaningful differences between what Vivek says about American identity and what Tucker says? Both of them explicitly reject the idea of an ethnic American, a heritage American, or any kind of identity politics. They both fully endorse the propositional nation of ideas, where an American is a person with no specific ethnicity, religion, identity, language, culture, or shared history, so basically the entire planet is just 8 billion undocumented Americans. Which is ironic, seeing as they're both saying this on the Turning Point USA stages, because this is an idea that Charlie Kirk vociferously rejected and called garbage.
If you are only a propositional people and you are not a people at all, if you're just a proposition and not a people, you don't have a nation. If you're just an idea, I used to believe this garbage like 10 years ago. America is just an idea. Not true.
But despite Tucker and Vivek both essentially endorsing the same propositional nation nonsense, only Vivek is getting slammed. And that's probably just because of the optics of an Indian anchor baby telling Americans that they don't exist while vying for their votes is a lot worse than Tucker saying it and being tactful enough to couch his nonsense in some pseudo-biblical mumbo-jumbo. In fact, Tucker might be worse because, unlike Vivek, he actually holds sway among a huge element of the right, and you can see from his statements on immigration and social degradation in Europe that he knows better. But for whatever reason, he's decided that now he will act as a barrier to the new right and has decided to do it on the most important issue of all, the issue that will define the future of the entire Western world, immigration and identity. Tucker's total rejection of identity politics and his desire to treat everyone as only individuals is a relic of a time long past. He claims this with great self-righteousness, and it would be a nice sentiment if there were only a few individuals coming into our country. But how the hell do I assess the impact of 20,000 Indians coming into a small country like Ireland every single year without looking at group identity or averages? How does Minnesota assess the impact of over 100,000 Somalis without looking at them as a group? How does France deal with 7 million Algerians without looking at them based on group identity? You see, Tucker's is a fundamentally infantile worldview that is 100% ill-equipped to deal with the situation we find ourselves in all over the Western world, and it must be rejected. And that's the thing with mass immigration. It has taken the sacred boomer truths that have held sway for decades and it has smashed them into 1,000 pieces. For generations, they've indoctrinated us to believe in the universality of man, and that things like identity, ethnicity, sex, and religion are all irrelevant vestiges of our primitive pre-Enlightenment past. But mass immigration has forced these ideas to come face to face with the cold hard reality of human nature, that we are tribal, that we do have group identities, that we do want different things. In-group preference is a real thing, and if you refuse to fight for your identity, then others will happily come in and take your place. But you don't have to totally abandon individualism entirely. Just accept the fact that while identity isn't everything, it also isn't nothing. And the deliberate erasure of the nuance of this position by the left is what for decades destroyed all anti-immigration and pro-nationalist movements. So I'll be damned if I let the right do the same thing.